Minnesota Appeals Court has denied an appeal aimed at halting construction of the Enbridge Line 3 tar sands pipeline in northern Minnesota. In a 2-to-1 ruling, the court upheld Minnesota Public Utilities Commission's approval of the 340-mile-long pipeline. More than 700 people have been arrested since June in Indigenous-led protests against the pipeline. Indigenous lawyer Tara Hauska of the Ginu Collective condemned Tuesday's ruling.
Today's ruling from the Minnesota Supreme Court is yet another example of Minnesota not responding to the climate crisis, not respecting Indigenous sovereignty, and continuing to ignore what's happening in real time all around us with smoky skies, the world burning, the rivers in drought, and water protectors being brutalized by police that are being paid by Enbridge.
Police that are being paid by Enbridge. We're listening to this report from Democracy Now!, and I take in consideration the amount of propaganda and financing that takes to have the entire world ignore the seriousness of climate disaster. And yet in the United States, we're faced with yet another attempt to construct a pipeline that could potentially disrupt the water supplies of millions of Americans, all in the backdrop of smoky skies, as was stated in that clip from Democracy Now! Joining me now to discuss is Olivia Dinucci. She's a part of RootsAction, and she is literally on the front line of one of these protests, one of these actions that is taking place in Minnesota. Olivia, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey everyone, I am here in so-called Minnesota at the state capitol with RootsAction. I came up to the front lines after there was an Indigenous-led call for folks to join the front lines in northern Minnesota, and I spent about 2 months up there in different resistance camps. The Gnu Collective, who was just featured on the clip in Democracy Now!, Tara Hauska, Winona LaDukes, Honor the Earth, Michelle Camp, Tasha Camp McGeezy, and then there's the other camps doing really important work right there, and I'm feeling really grateful to be able to be here and be in community and led by all of the Indigenous women, Two-Spirit, and a lot of youth activists here on the ground. Yesterday, a couple thousand people came out to the Capitol urging the governor and Biden to revoke the permits. The Army Corps of Engineers, the call is for them to do an environmental assessment review that has not happened yet, and which would stop the construction of the pipeline. It's set to be finished by the end of the month, but there have been a diversity of tactics, calling on politicians and policymakers, but a lot of direct action. Folks have been, there have been over 800 arrests for people using their bodies, whether that is locking on to construction and completely stopping construction for days on end, whether that is having sacred ceremonies where people are like on easements where the pipeline is going in. If people aren't familiar with the pipeline exactly, it goes through 27 waterway crossings here. It will, pipelines always spill, so it will make the water undrinkable. That is the Mississippi. That is Lake Superior, which carries 10% of fresh water in the world, and Mississippi going through, this whole country. There's a lot of elements that I am still learning. This has been an unlearning process as well. I hope that you all will speak with Indigenous folks directly. Right now they're in ceremony and in a meeting, most of them.
Wow.
And yes.
No, if you don't mind, because as you're talking about it, I was just thinking I would love to hear from the Indigenous populations. But could you tell us more about RootsAction and why you all are focused here from a political, economic, and philosophical perspective?
Yeah. So one big thing is that this is something that the corporate media, mainstream media, is not covering. And we are seeing the movement, Indigenous erasure has been 600 years and beyond here, and that many folks, I think, in this country may think that Indigenous people don't still live here, and they do, and we have so much to learn from them in terms of movement organizing, in terms of building off of Indigenous knowledge to recreate and reimagine the future we want to live in. And Roots Action is, we are trying to amplify this. We want this to be we want this to be on the minds of everyone. So many folks up here say this is not just an Indigenous problem. These aren't Indigenous lands. They are Indigenous lands, but the Black Snake, the pipeline shouldn't go through any lands.
That's
this
right.
is a human problem. Water, we all are made up of water. We all need water. And so this is something that we want to amplify, and we want more. The more awareness, the more people will see that this is injustice, and that we should all be stepping up and stepping out in this fight.
What are some of the things that people in our audience can do, right? So our audience is a magnificent collision of Black people and progressive activists, and what can we do either politically or even in terms of participating to help advance this cause?
Yes, one of the really powerful things about having experience in these camps is the intersectionality. We are Minneapolis, the movement for Black Lives after George Floyd was murdered, activated the entire world, and that momentum has carried the resistance for the Line 3 movement, which has been going on for years, and really seeing these intersections, liberation of all people in this. So I encourage everyone to read first more about Line 3, about Indigenous resistance movements in general, to inform ourselves. There are petitions. You can go to Progressive Hub through Roots Action and sign petitions to Biden, to Army Corps of Engineers, and there are donations. Bail funds are something that are increasing. The charges are going from misdemeanor to felony theft, which increases the bail to get folks out. Another fear tactic that the state is using. And then also to come to the front lines if you are able to, if you can get yourself here, stopline3.org. They have all the camps, the ways that you can get here. That's not accessible for everyone. However, if you are able to come, inclusion and the Two-Spirit LGBTQ communities within the camps are very welcoming. Coming up here with your friends and your family, you see 15-year-olds and you see 80-year-olds. It's intergenerational. It's interracial. It is. There is a space for all of us in this. So if you can put your bond on the line, that is definitely a call. If you can sign petitions, call your Congress folks. Organize solidarity actions. There are all of these toolkits online. The organizers have been doing this work for so long, following different groups on social media. Like I had said, Honor the Earth, GNU Collective, Resist Line 3, Stop the Money Pipeline. There's quite a few out there. And yeah.
Yeah, it is so encouraging. You said that this type of coverage would not be seen on the mainstream media. And I think the reason why is because if people actually saw how many people were actively standing up in a moment like this, I think more people would show up. Olivia, thank you so much for taking the time out of that action that you're participating in with Roots Action to share this with us.
Yeah, thank you. And I just want to say again, please continue to learn directly and hear from directly the Indigenous folks here. They're really leading the way. So
Absolutely.
I'm grateful to them.
And actually, so let's do it like this. If you can connect us with any of the voices that I know that they're in rituals right now. So when their voices become available, please help connect with David, and we'll get their voices amplified as well.
That's great. Thank you so much. And thank you for covering this and amplifying it to your networks.
Thank you.